Hey folks, Joseph A. Sobora here, and you're in for a very special treat because I'm going to be reviewing a timeless American sci-fi animated classic that came out on August 6, 1999. That's during the middle of the summer, where all the blockbuster films come out during that quarter of the late 90s, before we were getting into 2000. And that is the movie, a very favorite of mine, and definitely a great movie on its own level, The Iron Giant, which is based on the book by Ted Hughes, known simply as The Iron Man, but it would later become The Iron Giant in the States. It's a story about a young boy who one night found the Iron Giant that's appearing from outer space, and that's when he suddenly befriends with him, trying to learn all the ropes and everything. Yeah. This was a very beautiful, very touching, and very breathtaking film that I saw in theaters at the age of 14, and I really loved it so much that I later got the VHS tape that has a different cover art, and I just watched it many times and never get tired of it. Yeah. That I just later bought the DVD. Unfortunately, this is a new DVD that I picked up at Walmart just recently during my birthday, and this is the signature edition, which also had a Blu-ray release that I've been wanting to get for a while, but I somehow can't find it anywhere. So that sucks. But this is the only way I have to go with for now until I can try to track down the Blu-ray release so they have it for a good deal. So let's see what happens. Because unfortunately they're missing an hour-long documentary, which is The Giant's Dream, where they talk about the history behind the movie and how it got made and everything, and how it was adapted from the book, how it came to be, and how it all began. Not to mention, on a quick note, that this was actually inspired too by a rock musician who happens to be the executive producer for this, Pete Townshend from The Who actually did a musical adaptation of the book. And Bird was so impressed by it that he decided he wanted to do his film adaptation to inspire the idea. Because this was a story about a young boy who discovers a giant metal man that went all the way straight from outer space, came to Earth, and this was like during the setting of the 50s where paranoia seems to hit the fan. They were getting ready for World War II, so this was going to be one of the biggest events. And they're also missing a short featurette called The Salt Mines, where they talk about maybe some of the other cells that they left out. So it's not included on this DVD release. But they did ported all the features at this rate, all the features from the previous special edition DVD release that I got right here. Has this cover art. It looks really nice. At this point, it just shows the Iron Giant right there, and it shows Hogarth just looking up in the sky. Well, it's not exactly as good as the previous release cover arts, which just shows the entire giant, and you saw Hogarth on top of him, where it has a bunch of the army crew with the searchlights and the tanks and everything just going after him in that particular shot. So that was a better one, but that's okay. And has all the features, as we know. This is what it looks like. There's this cover art, where they show the Iron Giant going all the way straight into Earth, like it was a giant meteor, as I talked about it. Um, it's very identical on this release as well, with this one. Okay, I'm just trying to, yeah, right here, but this time they just put the title, and so that way you know. Okay. Yeah, and the cover art actually looks a lot better, but it does manage to look almost like the cover art for The Rocketeer, which, ironically enough, director Joe Johnston actually created the sketches in order to make him look exactly like the character. Because I know they come up with some different processes to make the Iron Giant work. But I guess for that nod, they kind of went ahead with it. So, and this is how the back looks like on the DVD. And also back to that, yeah, they did port it, one featurette that was actually the one that aired on the WB television network that was hosted by Ben Diesel. And I saw that before. It was actually really cool to see that. I haven't seen that in years, but it was great to see that again after all this time. So it was really cool. It was only 22 minutes. Because some of that, just a few minutes of it, were only included on the special edition DVD, which is ported here. But it was actually great to see that again. I haven't seen that in a very long time. And unfortunately, they didn't port the other remaining extras from the original DVD release, which actually had a music video besides the featurette. And it just had some numerous DVD-ROM extras and even some photography, so that should have been included to make the release better. Especially for the Blu-ray too, because it's been long awaited for years now. Anyway. Now, when this movie came out during the summer, it was a total bomb. Sadly, a giant bomb. It opened at number 9 at the box office, while films like The Sixth Sense was at number 1, along with movies like Bowfinger, Mystery Man, which didn't do very well either, and even the Blair Witch Project. That's why. And I think that's a shame. I wish people had went to see this movie just to see the experience of what it would have looked like on the big screen. Even on small screens too. Because it had a really great theatrical presentation. I love the traditional animation that they went into, where they blend in with 2D hand-drawn animation with the mix of 3D CGI animation to go into it, just for the giants. So I thought that looks really cool that they did that. And it actually has a touching story, very heartwarming, between the boy and a giant robot, trying to teach him how to do the ropes here and there, before something bad happens. And I just think that's a shame. Because I'm glad this movie had finally got a cult following over the years, and they're lucky enough for Cartoon Network and TNT to actually play this 24 hours during one day, like during the holidays of Thanksgiving and the 4th of July, because it just serves some justice for people who haven't seen this, or even picked up the home video or DVD release come to mind, and even Laserdisc for that matter. But they're lucky enough they even picked them up and got to see it for themselves, for those who missed out in theaters and just basically saw other films instead. And that's just a shame. Yeah. But nevertheless, I'm happy I went to see this, and I'm happy that I later got the VHS tape. It has a different cover art, which just shows the Iron Giant flying, with Hogard, and that was just a really amazing moment there. And all these other DVD releases come to mind over the years, so it was cool. I'm just happy to see that this is getting more love now, and all the attention it really deserves. And also, just to keep that in mind, I was really fascinated to finally see him on the big screen when I went to go see Ready Player One just recently. Just did a review back in April. And having to see him just as a short cameo, it was just... it really was a tribute to his character, but I gotta admit though, it sort of played out like the Terminator, you know, when in the climactic scene in Terminator 2, yeah, they definitely went to a similar approach to the movie, but with the Iron Giant going all the way down to the lava. That was like, wow. But that was during that climactic scene where he was battling along with the help of Gundam, going after the Mega Godzilla. Because, you know, originally in the book it was supposed to be Ultraman, but which is the Japanese series that my uncle is a big fan of, so that wasn't included. Yeah. Well, anyway. Well, let's just get to the review, just to keep on going for this particular story here. Stars Eli Marienthal, who actually went on to do a short-lived TV series on NBC called Tucker. Yeah, with Katie Sagal. I think I saw the show, like, I think maybe once, but I didn't see that many episodes because the show ended pretty quickly. Such a shame. Vin Diesel, as we all know, went on to do a lot bigger in his entire career. Went on to do all these Fast and the Furious movies, Triple X, and so on and so forth. But he also got to start with the movie Saving Private Ryan. And of course, Pitch Black, which brought us the character Riddick, with all the sequels that follow. Yeah. Keep that in mind. Christopher McDonald, from Happy Gilmore and several of his other films, even the Grease 2. Yeah, he always had that strange facial expressions he makes. He's always playing assholes in those other films he's been in. But nevertheless, he's a great actor. He has played some other different roles too. Harry Connick Jr. from movies like Copycats and Independence Day, but he's also a singer himself. Yes, he sang some songs from the movie When Harry Met Sally come to mind. He's a great guy. Jennifer Aniston from Friends, as well as The Edge, the short-lived sketch comedy, and the short-lived Ferris Bueller's show and all that. But of course, she wanted to become very popular, mostly for the show, Friends, and then went on to other films in her career. John Mahoney, who sadly passed away recently, but he's been best known for playing Frasier's dad in Frasier, but has been in films like Say Anything and The Manhattan Project and several others. And Emmet Walsh from Blade Runner and all his other films he's been in and TV appearances. James Gammon, Cloris Leachman, who has a spellbinding career, been in some, maybe just a few of the Mel Brooks movies, and had a TV show called The Mary Tyler Moore Show, playing Phyllis, Mary's best friend, and then she went on to have her spin-off series, and then went on to do all the other big stuff in her long career. Ollie Johnston and Frank Thomas. It's written by Tim McCanlies, and which Brad Bird also wrote the story. It's based on the book by Ted Hughes called The Iron Man, and it's directed once again by Brad Bird. The movie began somewhere on Earth in 1957. The Soviet Union had launched the Sputnik 1, a satellite that's orbiting around, making all these beeping noises. we spotted a giant object that's just like a meteor, just quickly lands all the way straight into Earth and winds up crash lands into the ocean just off the coast of Maine, and just winds up going straight into the forest near a beautiful town called Rockwell. And that's when we meet 9-year-old boy Hogarth Hughes, who's living with his mother, who works as a waitress at a local diner. She's also a widower, because we begin to find out later in the film that her husband is a military man working for the army, which unfortunately he was killed during the war. Didn't explain fully, they just show a picture of it, so that's what I figured out later on. Well, anyway, Hogarth wanted to have a pet. It turns out to be a squirrel. Yeah, to take care of, but unfortunately that didn't work out because of that incident that happened when he bumps into a hipster type of guy who actually works at a junkyard where he gets rid of scrap metal, and he's also into art and crafts. Yeah, named Dean McCoppin. Yeah, which that led to that accident where the pet squirrel actually went inside his pants, and he had to zip down his pants to get him out. And that causes a havoc. Well, anyway, Hogarth decided to stay home all alone, just watching a late night movie while having some snacks such as popcorn and some Twinkies, because his mother had to work late at the local diner. But then suddenly, after he was watching the movie, the signal got messed up, because he began to discover that the antenna was bitten off, and that's when he discovers that he spotted something that just came from outer space, and it turns out to be, as we all know, a giant metal man that's this big, like huge, called the Iron Giant. So what happened was, during that night, the Iron Giant was just trying to find some food, something that's made out of metal, like scrap metal or so. But then he winds up inside the power station, trying to eat every object that's made of metal, but he got caught by the electrical wires. He got electrocuted and he was stuck. So Hogarth suddenly came to the rescue to save him. I mean, at first he couldn't, because he was discovering it, and he almost ran away. But he came back, he saved his life by shutting off the power switch. Yeah, so now he was okay. So there we go. So he ran away, only to find out that his mom came. Yeah, her mom's name is Anne, by the way. Pick him up. He found out that Hogarth was gone, and unfortunately she wasn't in the mood for Hogarth to actually see what he saw. So keep that in mind. So during like a couple days later, he begins to find where the Iron Giant is at. So he's actually in the forest, just when he was being discovered by a pompous, complete, and I'm going to say this word, a complete asshole named Kent Manley, who's not only working for the government, but he's also looking for some clues to discover why all the locals out there had noticed that some of the cars or all the buildings or even what just happened in the ocean, as a fisherman had spotted, that some of the objects had been crushed by a giant creature. So he was trying to go on the search to find this giant creature that's crushing everything. So anyway, Hogarth was continuing his search for the Iron Giant who saved his life. So he came and he actually ran away. he actually got knocked out by that giant branch. Gave him a runny nose, and he was afraid that the Iron Giant was going to hurt him. So, but he gave him a present where they show the shut-off bulb from the power station. So then during that day, he was trying to be able to understand by actually teaching the Iron Giant how to handle things. Because unfortunately, he was misunderstood. He actually had a bump on his head, and because he probably got unconscious from that crash that he had during the ocean. So he's beginning to tell him to stay put. He'll be able to see him. He'll be able to take pictures of him just to show some proof, show to his mom and everything. But I know that's just it doesn't seem to work out at this point. But either way. So apparently Hogarth is trying to do some commands for the giant, but unfortunately the giant can't listen because he's very misunderstood. So he wants to following him everywhere he was going, all the way straight back home. But then all of a sudden he ate part of the metal of the train tracks because the train was about to go, just before the train was about to arrive. So Hogarth wanted the giant to put it back to the way it was until the train crashes him, and some of his parts were missing. But of course he actually has that one giant tool that actually vibrates, by the way, and actually puts them all together so he can actually fix himself. So Hogarth decided to put him inside the barn, so just to keep him safe, so that way no one could actually see him. He was getting ready for dinner, but unfortunately he discovered the giant hand of the Iron Giant that just he was just having trouble, trying to track himself into the barn, but just winds up in the house and turning on the TV and going all the way straight up to the bathroom. So Hogarth had to try his best to get him out of there, his hand out of there. And that's when Ken Mansley came to the door just to tell him some questions to Hogarth and the rest about the giant creature, if he knows anything about that. Well, I know that leads to bigger problems here. After dinner, he came back to the barn, trying to bring in some comic books to read for the Giants. So he brought in some comic books such as The Spirits, as well as Atomo the Metal Menace, which is a villain, and then of course Superman. Yeah, the alien superhero from Krypton. The Man of Steel himself. Yeah. So part human, part alien in a way. So he also tells the giant that you are who you choose to be. So he doesn't have to be the villain. He could be the hero, like Superman. He's very hungry. He wanted to eat some more scrap metal. So he went all the way to Dean's scrap metal junkyard, just to have whatever he wants. Gets all he can eat by eating all the scrap metal, including that car, which the alarm just went off. Trying to do his best to stop it, but then he throws it all the way straight into where the house is, where Dean is. So that was really funny. It was a very funny scene. So Hogarth decided to stay with Dean for a while. He started getting some coffee. Trying to get to know where the giant came from. Just introduce him. Just when he was eating some scrap metal. So I stayed there during the night. Then he came back home, and then he discovers that Kent is now staying over in their room for just a while, because that way to do some suspicion And that's what he's been doing all this time, and he wants to get to know Hogarth better because of, of the giant. It led to that funny moment when the Hogarth decided to use some cocoa lax, the laxatives, to put inside his ice cream, which actually led to him to actually go straight to the bathroom because he was trying to talk to Hogarth about the giant creature that he was searching for. But so anyway, so Hogarth ran away, came back to the junkyard, just trying to see what Dean is doing because he just called Hogarth earlier to discover that the Iron Giant was eating all of his scrap metal, including his arts and crafts that he created by scrap metal, because he's into art, as we all know. So it turns out in the end, he begins to learn not to eat all the arts and crafts that he created. So now he actually fixed everything that Dean tells him to do. So they just spend time doing all these activities, such as having the giant just moving around with the car like he was into orbit and into space. And then of course they jump into the lake. That was just amazing, and very funny too, where after Hogarth just jumps into the lake first, the Iron Giant just did the same thing too, and causes a huge tidal wave, and just knocks out Dean while he was reading the newspaper. Causes the entire forest to be filled with. It just turns into like a giant tidal wave where you see all these fishes and a raccoon involved, and you saw Hogarth on the tree. And the giant was just on the lake. And then Dean along with his chair just land straightly into the middle of the road where just some farmer just drive by and he just says, "Yeah," and he just drives by after that. So Kent just continues to search for the giant creature, and then he begins to find the camera that was missing, that Hogarth just left off just when he was about to take pictures of the giant. And then he actually took the camera, and then he film developed it, and that's when he discovered Hogarth with the giant. And that's what leads to him actually calling the government, including General Shannon, to find out that that's the giant creature that they've been searching for, so that way it could be the event of paranoia that's about to happen. Like this might be sent from somewhere around. Makes it even worse because at first Kent did lie to the general about the giant creature. They actually used the Iron Giant as a decoy here, pretending like it didn't really happen at all. But by the time the giant became a defense mechanism, because this is where he begins to discover about death by Hogarth, when the deer got shot by those two hunters. Which kind of led to a bit of a nitpick because they started to focus on gun control, and they kind of went into the storyline a bit, which to me I just felt like that was kind of unnecessary to actually mention guns kill. I mean, it's obviously people don't know the phrase guns don't kill people, people do, because guns are weapons. But I know they are very dangerous too, and you gotta be careful. But I know that's becoming a problem nowadays already, especially in today's world, which is very sad. I don't know. I'm not big on that. But anyway, But that's when so Hogarth was trying to tell him about that death is part of life, that it's going to happen someday, no matter what. But even for him, at least considering that he is made of metal, he has a heart and soul, and that's the key importance about the film. Well, anyway. So what happened was, though, was just when Hogarth was just playing around with the giant, because he wanted to pretend like he's either the villain from the comic book Atomo, and he didn't want to play Atomo, so he wants to play Superman. But then suddenly, Hogarth just uses the gun, which apparently that's what leads to the scene where he's not only defensive, but this will lead to the point where he begins to experience what happened way back, and that's when he becomes evil by actually shooting laser from his eyes. He almost attacked Hogarth, but Dean came to the rescue to save him, so he doesn't get caught. Yeah, he didn't mean what he did, though, so he actually ran away. So Hogarth just chased after him. So Dean decided to join in, until all of a sudden the giant had saved two boys from falling down onto a house, because they were just looking up onto the binoculars of what the giant looks like, and he actually saved their lives. They were about to fall, and the giant grabs them, and the townspeople were pretty amazed that he saved the two boys' life from their father. But that is until the army just came and they started shooting at the giant. They're going after him. Yeah, thanks to Kent Mesley. So this is when Hogarth was trying to save the giant, and they're trying to escape from the army and the rest who are attacking him. So then he fell, and then we also learned that he can actually fly by shooting up on the bottom of his feet. And so he can fly all the way. Even though he was with Hogarth, he got attacked by some of the planes that was launching all these missiles. And to make matters worse, just when that one missile actually hits him, and he lands all the way straight into the mountains, with Hogarth. So then Dean and Anne just came. They pick up Hogarth, but then the giant suddenly uses his weaponry to attack all the army around. So he's trying to save Hogarth's life this way. Yeah, and about to destroy everyone. And just when Hogarth came and just to help the giant, this is when Mansley did a really stupid thing by telling them to launch the missile that was going to hit directly into the position where the giant is. But unfortunately, the giant was right on that other side, so now the missile is actually going to go all the way up, and it's going to hit into the town. It's going to kill everyone, wipe them all off. So the only way that they could stop the missile was to have the giant, and this is one of the saddest moments in this entire movie, was that the giant decided to save everyone in town by going all the way up into outer space to go straight into the missile and explodes. So yeah, now the Iron Giant had disappeared somewhere. It turns out that he was actually in a glacier in Ireland. So that's where we saw all the parts that was inside, and so now we found out that he's actually alive. But to the town, but they still will remember the Iron Giant by being cast into a statue of a replica of what the giant would look like, along with Hogarth, that was done by Dean, just to dedicate a memory to him. And yeah, but luckily the general did found the missing piece, which is the vibrating tool. Yeah. And that's where the vibrating tool will actually go all the way to Iceland to put them all together. So it's really cool. So now we know that he's alive. Yeah. Had to spoil that surprise, but I just wanted to mention it because it's just so amazing. It's very beautiful, very heartwarming. I really love the film, and this was a great story. That's based on the book by Ted Hughes, and it really shows the kindness of having to deal with a boy. You know, getting to know a giant robot who is misunderstood, but yet he begins to understand later, even though he does remember at times. I saw the signature edition on the DVD, and the only scenes that they have were just two. One scene is where we begin to see the giant's dream sequence, where suddenly Dean was just watching while he was asleep The Tonight Show with with Jack Parr, and then suddenly we begin to discover that the signal was changing just when the giant was moving around, tossing and turning at the junkyard, and then we begin to see his nightmare where they show a bunch of iron giants around and they're attacking. So this was like a nightmare that he was about to experience, and just after having to deal with death. Yeah. And then there was also a scene from the beginning where they show the Iron Giant's hand moving around. When he was turning on the TV in the original cut, they show just a cereal commercial, but then in the signature edition, they just show a commercial of Tomorrowland, which ironically enough, Brad Bird actually went on to direct the movie Tomorrowland, which is based on the theme attraction from Disney. Yeah, which you can see at Disneyland or even Walt Disney World too, but it's mostly Disneyland. Yeah, that's probably mostly because Brad might have been a big fan of that. Was it because he was a kid when he went there? So I guess he was very interested in doing Tomorrowland, even as a movie. Yeah, which didn't do well, unfortunately. But there was a film adaptation that stars George Clooney, as well as Hugh Laurie, and Keegan-Michael Key, Britt Robertson, Kathryn Hahn. Yeah. Well, that movie, it was alright, but not exactly as good as I expected it to be. But it's good to see that Brad Bird had continued to go on to do a lot of work. After this movie, he went on to do The Incredibles when he worked with Pixar, with John Lasseter. And of course, he's going to do the sequel, which is going to come out this year, and I can't wait to see it. But he also had worked on the movie Ratatouille. And I also heard this movie actually won 9 Annie Awards too for this film, and it's really cool. Just shows how beautiful this movie really is. The blend of 2D and 3D animation and the paranoia that's happening in the 50s, and the boy, getting to know a giant creature that's just like getting to know a young pet, like a puppy or a kitty or whatever. It's just amazing. Yeah, I mean, and you got great characters right there, like Anne, his mom, who works as a waitress at a local diner. basically just like your 50s style mutters out there who's independent but nevertheless take care of their family, even though they're busy most of the time. And then you have an FBI. Then you have like a hip, cool type of guy named Dean who's into arts and crafts. But he also works as a scrap metal owner. And then of course you get the complete asshole named Kim Mainsley, the FBI agent trying to go on the search for the giant creature. And then you have General. Then you have the General. Then you have General Shannon, who's actually working with the army to go after the creature that Mansley was talking about. So, either way, some great voice acting right there. They really served the characters and purposes and shows, and it's just amazing. Really loved it. So, if by any chance, if you love this movie so much, definitely pick up the Blu-ray, DVD, any other kind that you choose. Also, the soundtrack is also a good choice for the film too, because this was done by the late great Michael Gammon, because he created a wonderful score that was done by the Czech Philharmonic, and they did a great job portraying the score, the very touching and beautiful score to fit well with the film during that atmosphere. So it really shows right there. So anyway, no matter what, the Iron Giant would always be remembered. That's for sure. So anyway, I give the film 5 stars. I'm Joseph A. Sobora, and I'll see you later. Bye.